Hey, welcome back to Reddit Cheating Wife, the best channel for cheating stories. Like and subscribe to the channel for cheating stories like this.
Decided to finally leave. She tortured me. I finally decided to file for divorce and separation. When we had our first child in September 2020, my wife changed dramatically. The first few months were challenging for both of us, as they are for most couples. She was suffering from PPD a little more, and our low was suffering from colic. It began to improve as we settled into a routine, and by month 6, she was messaging her ex and concealing the fact that he had stayed over while I paid for her to take a trip to give herself a break. I had to coax it out of her, and she assured me that nothing had occurred. At this moment, I should have fled. I assumed she was burdened with taking care of a child after that, so I took the child a lot more so she could go skiing, camping, and so on, none of which was provided to me. In my mind, I needed to assist my PPD spouse more. The ex reappeared, and she wanted to restart the relationship so she could enjoy the amazing she used to have. I messed up again. I attempted to work with her to find a solution. The open relationship did not take place. Months later, she said that I was not a supporting spouse and that she wanted an open relationship once again, or she would file for divorce. I tried to convince her that this was a poor idea and that we should go to counseling and speak about other choices. This ultimatum was refused and pushed by her. So we started dating, and she ended up sleeping with 2 strange men. She stated she wanted to have the she had with those randoms with me after I told her I was done and wanted to split. Whatever, I gave it one more go in the relationship, but after months of bitterness and awful visualizations of her emotionally and physically cheating on me for a year, I quit. I'd want to file for a divorce. Now we're talking about money. She wants me to fund her while she's a som for our child. I married a narcissistic, selfish person, and I despise myself for a variety of reasons. I feel inadequate, stupid for marrying for such selfish reasons, ignorant for attempting to make this work for so long, and now susceptible to losing my funds and getting kicked on spousal support and child support. Edit, please acquire some sympathy for the rest of us. I understand what you're saying. You don't have to be impolite about it. Story 2. Cheated while me and baby were dying. More of a rant to get it off my chest. Any suggestions would be much appreciated. Because I'm on mobile, I'm going to be rambling and jumbled. Just a heads up, this is going to be long. I've been with my fiancé for 6 years, and we have 2 children from a prior relationship whom he adopted, and they love each other. They consider him their father and refer to him as such. I love him so much it aches. He's my closest friend, and I've always felt like we were destined to be together. He continued begging for a baby, but I was hesitant since my last pregnancy was a disaster that left me with a heart issue. I eventually consented, and I had a positive test on the day they announced the lockdown in March 2020. This is when things began to go wrong. I was so sick that I couldn't get out of bed or care for my 2 children, but I had warned him that this may happen. He became despondent and began to drink regularly, which resulted in a lot of squabbling and him continually going to stay with his brother. Anyway, the lockdown was lifted, and I returned to work during the day while he returned to work at night. We only saw each other when I went to work and when he woke up for work. I noticed a shift in our relationship. He seemed distant and uninterested in me, and I assumed it was due to the stress of everything. When my maternity leave began, I had to do everything, even walk to school, with a split pelvis and crutches. There were times when I was about to pass out and I would call him, pleading for him to come assist me, to which he would respond, "I'm trying to fin sleep. Deal with it yourself." So I'm 6 months pregnant, unhappy, haven't kept anything down my whole pregnancy, in continuous pain, been in and out of the hospital with dehydration etc., and he began going to band practice and working evenings out, which gradually grew into overnight events. I honestly don't know how I was so foolish. The concept never even occurred to me. While I'm barely functioning, he continues telling me that his buddy Dave's girlfriend is pregnant and that she's doing this and that I'm not even trying, that I'm exaggerating everything. Our anniversary was approaching, so we went on a date night the night before and sent the kids to Grans for a sleepover. I gave him gifts, and he didn't get me anything. We were bowling, and he walked to the bar to buy a drink when his phone rang, and it was his buddy Dave. The text he sent indicated he was out with his nephews, which made me suspect, so I searched through his phone later that night. We had free access to each other's phones before but realized he had been keeping his phone on him, even under his pillow while he slept. I saw all the texts, months worth of them both laughing at me, them planning a life after the kid is born, her stating how she would care for my baby on weekends, that he loves her and is only here because of the bubs, and that he wishes I had never been pregnant. When I dialed the number, a lady answered, but immediately hung up when she heard my voice. I woke him up, confronted him, and a massive dispute ensued, with him denying everything, stating it was just his male buddy joking about, laughing, and announcing he was done and leaving. During this, I begin to get severe stomach aches and intense vomiting, and I inform him that I am going to the hospital because I believe something is wrong. He won't allow me to take a cab because he thinks I'm faking it, which I don't get since I've never been a drama queen or anything. So he's driving me to the hospital like speeding, slamming on the brakes unexpectedly, and frightening the hell out of me as I'm in tears begging him to calm down. When we arrive, he refuses to come in with me and forces me to go alone. After about half an hour of me calling him and begging him to come sit with me because I'm scared, he finally comes up, only to continue yelling at me, telling me that it was Dave's girlfriend who answered the phone and that I'd caused a huge fight between them. I was so screwed up, hooked up to machines, having fluids pumped into me while on my hands and knees, basically puking up my stomach lining because I couldn't go to the restroom, yet I apologized like a complete. I go home at 6 a.m., now technically our anniversary, which I have always made a huge fuss over, and I'm on the couch with a bucket in fetal position, unable to push myself to drink water. He comes in at 2 p.m. and tells me he's heading to band practice. I know where he's going, but I'm not going to fight him, so he departs and says he'll be back in the morning, leaving me alone in the home. When I went to let the dog out, I discovered he had both keys and had locked me in. When I finally got a hold of him hours later, I was terrified, and he refused to return. His sister eventually persuades him to meet her with the keys, and she comes and sits with me till the following morning. She attempted to get me to go to the hospital, but I refused, and I honestly believe I had given up. I messaged him and told him I wanted to stop things, but he came up the following morning and sapped all of my power. I ended up apologizing and promised to go on antidepressants, which he agreed to while I was pregnant. I honestly believed it was all in my brain. So the following weekend there was a huge fog. I was 31 weeks pregnant at the time, and I honestly don't remember much of it. It's Sunday, and I recall paramedics arriving at my home, as well as being in an ambulance but unable to open my eyes, move, or reply. I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember is being in a hospital with a swarm of doctors and nurses racing around me. I can hear but not see my fiancé, and I beg him to make them all stop and take me home. I wander in and out of consciousness, and I hear the doctor suggest that the baby may have to be delivered right away. The next thing I remember, it's Thursday, and I'm in the intensive care unit being treated for malnutrition. Because it's a critical time and I'm in the ICU, visitors are not permitted until I'm transferred to the prenatal ward a few days later. My boyfriend informed me that if he had waited to call an ambulance, both me and my baby would have perished. He was also advised that at one point, he could have to choose between me and my baby. When I go out a week later, he has had to stop his work to care for me and the kids. He begins to be affectionate towards me again, and everything seems normal. But messages are still being exchanged, and I'm devastated, physically, intellectually, and emotionally. I kept thinking that as soon as the baby is in his arms, he'll understand what's essential. My baby chose to make an early debut at 35 weeks, but he had to spend 2 weeks in the NICU and I had to remain there for a week. The texts are still going out when I get home. I eventually snapped and told him I was done, that I knew what was going on. Over the following 2 weeks, he gradually begins to accept the truth, but only when I have evidence. So this is what I know, and I don't believe it's everything. It had been going on since July, and it was started by an ex-girlfriend he ran into. She was in my home. He discovered a nice video on his phone that is now engraved in my brain and vehicle. I found out because both his brother and sister knew and still managed to look me in the face. I didn't forgive them, but I simply had to smile since they don't believe they did anything wrong. She broke up with her husband for my fiancé, and he continued texting her for 5 months after Booba was born. For a while, it was because she said she was pregnant, which proved out to be a lie. For the remainder, he maintains it was an ego boost and he didn't want to harm her. It's been approximately a year since she's been gone from our lives, yet I still can't stop thinking about her. Everything brings her back to mind. My baby also has a number of health issues, which I blame on myself because I gave up, and on both of them since they are the cause of it. I never got to face her, never got to question what kind of woman pursues a guy in a relationship who is having a kid. Honestly, if I ever see her, I'm going to prison because I won't be able to stop myself. Honestly, I never received a genuine justification for it, just I don't know, or he had a blackout from drinking, which irritates me since I have an analytical mind and like to know why and how things operate. It's difficult for me and my fiancé to remain together. I visit a therapist, and things like this, writing it down, are beneficial. Throughout the ordeal, my fiancé was like a different person. At moments, he didn't even resemble him. I'm not making any excuses for him because there aren't any. I know he's really apologetic, and I know he's disgusted with himself. He now sees someone for his drinking and speaks to someone, but he still believes we need couples therapy. I have full access to his phone if I so choose, but I don't since I'm trying to trust him. There's obviously more to my narrative, but those are the highlights.